Hey man,
Hey Nathan, how's it going?
good. This is
You
a
enjoy,
rare moment. It seems we're not in the same office. Usually it seems.
do you like your beef brisket for lunch?
Yeah, yeah. How was yours? We had the same meal, it's
Great.
right?
It was pretty delicious. Pretty delicious. Let's get into the show. Let's
Let's
go
do
into.
it.
I'm going to show some stuff today, but first, you posted a topic that I thought was kind of interesting this morning, and I've had similar thoughts about this. So I'll kind of start by talking a little bit about um, what we're talking about. Uh, you were talking about. Well, actually, I'll speak more broadly about it. So this is a topic about quotas. About like for example, in Basecamp, we've always had like a project limit or a number of or disk space limits, and a lot of products have that, like disk space limits or user limits or whatever the limits are. Right? There's limits, and when you have a limit, you typically like when you tell a computer that there's a limit, it's pretty hard. It's like hard limit. If this number do this, if this number do that, like it's conditional, and there's sort of it's Boolean basically. There's a point where it's this or that, and I feel like that's fine, but humans don't work that way typically. So if someone, for example, let's say we have a 10 gigabyte file space limit on Basecamp or High-Rise, whatever it is, doesn't even matter, and someone hits the 10 gigabyte limit, like what should happen? Well, if you tell the computer that says like someone cannot upload more than 10 gigs of files, like it's pretty cut and dry. They're done at that point. They have to either upgrade or do something else. But I feel like if there was a human equivalent to that and someone sort of went over, you might just talk to them. You might go, hey, just to let you know, you weren't supposed to do this, but it's cool. Maybe don't do it next time, or maybe it's cool. I don't even know what you'd say, but you'd say something. You wouldn't just be like, no, or whatever, right?
Right.
So something I've been thinking a lot about with quotas is that maybe soft quotas are the best way to start something, just to start, right? So if you're worried about somebody hitting, like for example, if you don't know how much disk space someone's going to use, you don't know where your actual limits are. Maybe it's better just to like state some limits. Just say like you have 10 gigs of space, but let people kind of go over that if they want to, and then you can kind of get a sense of like where people are actually landing there. Like the system could email you or let you know or notify you in some way saying, hey, these 6 people have gone over their limit. We're going to let them go over the limit. They can keep using the product. Maybe I'll reach out to them personally and say, hey, we noticed that you're a bit over the limit that we set out. Like what are you trying to do? Are you uploading big files? Like, kind of using it as an opportunity to talk to someone and learn something versus shutting them down and making them make a choice, which is not the way it would typically be if it was more of a human conversation. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of a fan of the idea of soft limits. I'm starting to become a fan of soft limits, which is state a limit, but don't enforce it. See what happens around the edges, and be a bit more human about it, and see where it goes. So anyway, that was something that I've been thinking about. It's also just simpler to build. Like for example, if you were out of disk space,
Right.
now we have to maybe pitch. We have to tell you. Then we maybe pitch an upgrade, and we pitch an upgrade. That means we have to sell more disk space. We have to build a system to sell more disk space. And there's nothing wrong with building those systems. It's just that it's a lot of work that may not be necessary, or maybe you'll learn something new if you just let people kind of go over the limit a little bit and then talk to them.
Right. And
So
you're already just making guesses. I mean, it's like, yeah, I know how I'm going to use a system, but I don't really know how someone else is going to use a system, and we want them to use it. So it's just like, maybe they only have, 1,000 contacts, but they send them really big files, and so like the things that we've broken it out down to don't really make sense. And so
right.
no, I agree that the soft limits, like the soft quotas, that makes a lot of sense.
And also think about it this way. Let's say you have an account that has 1,000 contacts. Like that's your limit. Let's say you have some plan. There's like 1,000 contacts. Like if someone adds 1,100, does it really matter to you?
Right.
You don't want to push them into having to pay more to add an extra 100, right? But if someone is on the 1,000 contact plan and they add 28,000, okay, that's a different scenario. But like maybe it's better to let someone go a little bit over. You can even send them a note saying, hey, we noticed you went a little bit over. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Obviously, if you continue to go over significantly, we'll have to ask you to upgrade to the next plan. But hey, the next few hundred are on us. Don't worry about it. Like you can kind of make an interesting situation out of that. And really, it's kind of almost feels unfair. Like we've had this thing in Basecamp for a long time where we had like a 10 or 20 project plan, and people are always dancing around that number. Like someone who's on the 10 project plan will make 9, they'll go to 10, they won't be able to make any more, so they archive other ones, and it's just like a hassle for them when they only need to make 12. And like if they were going to make 100, I'm not going to put like let them be on a 10 project plan and make 100 projects. But if they make 11 or 12, like, does it really matter? I'd rather they just be happy than me try and extract an upgrade out of them.
Right.
That's sort of the idea, is like, what can you learn from the edges, and what can you allow yourself to be open to learning by letting people go over lines and then just ask them about the lines.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. There's some other kind of UI details and communication details I still kind of don't have figured out though. Like, there's this, so we're like yesterday we were talking about, and then this is all stemming from this new feature that we're building into Highrise right now, but allowing people to send bulk email. And there's this thing that we've talked in previous episodes about, how do we stop the spammers, right? That's obviously anyone's goal when you allow people to send email out of your system. And we've got stuff like, it goes through a system to check for typical spam messages. It uses a third-party filter to, look through these messages for bad words and IP addresses and everything else. So that's great. But then the other thing that we were going to do is a small quota per hour, so that if you were going to send 1,000 messages, we're only going to say, let's just say it's 150. We're only going to send 150 in the first hour for you, so that we can make sure that, this is how you start. And we're going to make sure that 150, they go through okay. They don't come back with a bunch of spam complaints, bounces, and stuff like that. So that way, if you are a spammer, we can tell in the first 150 before we send out the rest of the, 850.
Right.
That way we can kind of minimize the damage you just caused.
Yeah. I think that's a really reasonable way to approach it. Like the first time anyone sends any bulk anything, just let them know, like in this, you got to build this in, but say like, we're only going to send 50 emails to start. We're going to see what the response, or whatever the thing, the criteria you search on. Like you can say, just to prevent abuse of the system, we're just going to, everyone, the first time anyone sends any emails, only 50 go out the first time, and then the rest are delayed for an hour, and then we send the rest out assuming everything's okay.
Right.
So say something like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's tricky. Like we're even rate limited, by the email service provider that we have, that we can only send out so many messages per hour, and then our limit grows, right? So as we continue to be a good sender of email, our limits grow. So there's like that kind of thing that's it's a possible complexity we could also introduce to the user, to someone using Highrise. Like we could kind of partition off their account as a percentage of our quota that we have or whatever, and say like, hey, your quota is also growing. When you start, you only get 50 messages per hour, and as we trust you more, you get more messages to send per hour. Is that really worth trying to communicate to people? I mean,
that's too much, I would say. To me, it'd be like it's almost pass fail the first time, and then just let someone at it, rather than like graduating this sort of really complex thing where we're going to let you do 50 first, then next time we'll let you do 200, and then if you pass that test, we'll let you do 500. At a certain point, it feels like an overbearing parent. It's more like if you're able to, it's kind of like you go to the amusement park or something. There's like the marker. Like if you're tall enough here, you're fine. And that's kind of what we're saying here. Is like if you can send 100 emails, then it's fine, or whatever it is. Like you passed, and we trust you now. And only if there's then an anomaly later do we come and talk to you. So you'd still have to track anomalies at some level, but you don't have to sort of. I think it just would be frustrating to like slowly open the door. Just open the door once someone passes the first test, and make the first test hard enough that you're pretty confident after that point that everything's okay.
Yeah, I can. To tell you the truth, I can already see how someone could abuse that. Man, sending emails sucks.
Yeah.
Like I can already imagine, like if I were to communicate it that way, like, hey, the first 50 we're gonna check. They'll just send it to themselves, right? They'll create 50 email addresses of their own and send it out,
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's kind of the thing about like assuming the worst.
Yeah.
Spammers have much better tools than high rise. That's the first thing. It's like, why are they going to send up for high rise to send bulk emails, spam emails? Like it's not the best tool for that anyway. Like if you're going to really spam, you're going to send hundreds of thousands of emails, not like 180. It's just not, there's not much gain in sending 180 spam emails. I don't think. I really don't think that that's why people are coming to your tool for that. So that just doesn't, it doesn't bug me to say, like to even have a test, but if you want to have a test, like just have a reasonable test, limit it at 150 or 50 or 100, whatever it is. And I think it's fair to say like the first, just to make sure, just to make sure the list is clean or whatever you say, you got to come up with the right words, right? Because you don't want people to think you don't trust them. And it's not even about them. It's just about making sure that there are no bad apples, because a bad apple can spoil the bunch in terms of spamming.
Yep.
But just kind of have a reasonable limit. Maybe it's even 500. I don't know. Make something that like wouldn't affect most people at all anyway. Like if you're going to send more than 500, then we don't actually tell you. So the first step is we don't tell you when we're going to test you. We just assume that if you send 85, it's fine. If you send 95, it's fine. You send 185, it's fine. But if you go over the threshold of whatever the secret threshold is that you have in your mind, let's call it 500, then all of a sudden, then you test, because that's a suspect account. But everyone else is probably fine if they're sending 18 emails to 18 clients.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
There's some points where not everyone, or certainly not everyone's equal here. If you're sending 12 emails, it's fine. If you're sending 25, it's fine. If you're selling 82, it's probably fine. Especially if you've had your high-rise account for more than 2 years. Like there's all sorts of things you can do to make it so that the people who almost certainly are not going to abuse the system don't have to pay any penalty.
Right.
And then those who are brand new, or there's something unusual or something way out of the norm, then you can slow it down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting. Like, I mean, we obviously, there's certain things you can trust already, right? Like age of account, whether or not they're paying already versus a new account. It's interesting though about like that's not the norm, and that's a good idea. What you just said was like letting new people who are still doing things in small doses that look normal, but most people don't take that approach. When you sign up for systems like these, it's just like everybody gets thrown in that same bucket. We assume you're guilty and hopefully you can get out of it.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach, to be like, no, we assume you're innocent. You're probably gonna be doing small things anyway. As soon as you eclipse some weird factor, well, then now we'll start taking a look at your account. That's a good point. I like that.
You can, whatever you're still guessing, right? Like you're guessing what the sort of the you're guessing what the abuse threshold might be, or like the abuse symptoms. It's like 500 emails, new customer. They only have 300 contacts in the database until yesterday. Like whatever it is, and actually that's even way too complicated. I would just start with a number. Whatever you feel like. If someone's sending under 200, they're fine. That's it. They're fine. And then, because that's not really spam. Who's spamming it? You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, technically you could, but like, why go through the trouble of using this CRM tool to spam people if at 200 people at a time? It's just like it's just such not worth the hassle.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I'll think about it along those lines. All right.
Yeah, any other thoughts about that?
No, not really. I mean, it's just a tricky little situation, right? Like it's like, you end up queuing up. Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts about it right now. Like, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just like how there's so many little complicated parts of this that it's just like, and the whole goal of adding bulk email into Highrise was to like simplify this thing and not expose all of these problems. But it's like really quickly you get into like, oh, what's your bounce rate, and what's your spam complaint rate, and what's your hourly send rate and quota, and there's like so many things that you could shove in front of a person's eyes.
Yep.
And I don't think most people understand any of this stuff.
Right. I would go like, come up with a number, pick one, 500. If someone's sending more than 500 emails, say, hey, we can only send 500 at once the first time you send emails, or we can only send 50 at once the first time you've chosen to send more than 500. Whatever it is, a simple statement, simple rule, like dead simple, simple.
Yep.
And you may have to move the goalposts over time, but start there, get a feel for it, see how it goes, and make it simple on everybody. And that way you don't ever penalize anyone who's just being honest and just small and fair.
Yeah. And by the way, yesterday's conversation, everybody should go watch yesterday's episode if you're interested in this stuff about showing work. Like I ended up going back to the tab. I think it works really well there. Changed all the copy on the other tabs. Like things fit together really nicely on that page now. So that was a good convo yesterday, talking about how to get into one of these bulk emails from our current UI.
Good. That was fun. I really enjoyed that call or that show because it was really practical. And it was just kind of rough riffing, and that's the best part of product design. I just love like, here's a problem. What do we got? We got space, we got concerns, we got constraints, we know someone wants to do something. Like, how do we fit it all in? How do we make it work? How does it work? What can we change? It's funny. Just yesterday, we had we were redoing the onboarding flow for adding. Actually, not onboarding is the wrong word. We're redoing the people flow in Basecamp 3 to make it easier to add people to a project. And we were stumped yesterday. David was working on some code, and he pinged me and he said, hey, or he pinged Jonas, who's working on it with him, and he said, or actually pinged me. He's like, this one step doesn't feel right. It's weird. Let's say you're just working with one person. We had this idea that you had to create a company first, then you can add people to a company. But he's like, what if it's just one person? And then we had this whole flow built out for like a company first, then person, because we were making assumptions about, well, if you're working with a client, you're probably working for a company. But in many cases, you're working when you hire someone or someone hires you, it can be an independent person, just a citizen. You know what I mean? Just like someone's hiring you to redo their kitchen. The client is the person's name. It's not like they don't have a company, right? So we're just kind of struggling through this, and we had this idea to have two different modes where you can say, is this a business you're doing business with, or is it just an individual? Like we had this idea, right? But that's going to branch. That's two branches and two forks. Now we're like, well, what if it's an individual, but it's like a family? And so like you're working with the wife and she wants to add her husband, or you're working with the husband and she wants to add her wife. Like it's no longer an individual now. Like what is it? And it got like really weird. And then we're just like, the problem is not the feature, it's the words. We were saying, what is the client's company name? But if we just said, who's the client? And below that headline, we had examples like Nike, First Presbyterian Church, the Jones family, Bill Smith. Like we had some examples. You could look at that and go, oh, I could just put anyone in here. I get it. And then the next thing was like, the next thing we were saying before was, I wish I had these screenshots, but they're actually, I'll show them another time. Was like who at the client should be on this project or something like that. So first you pick the company name, then you added the people, and we're like, we just want to say who's the client, and then below it was like, well, now what do we say? And it was just enter the contact information for the people who should be involved or something like that. And it just, by just changing a couple words, we saved a ton of we prevented a lot of confusion from creeping into the product by having two more branches that we had to design for, and then have to like maybe branch off another one later on. And it was just about words. And so that's what's so fun about, and I think so interesting about the stuff we looked at yesterday, was for the most part, it was like, you're like, I don't have any room because it's like tag of this and unremove a tag. It's like, what if that just said tag and untag? Like cut it in half. Maybe now you have room. Yeah, that may not solve the problem, but now like that opens up an opportunity to solve the problem possibly that way, or you still do look for another solution, but now you have two possible solutions. Before you had like, this doesn't work at all. And it's just words.
Yeah. It's funny. Today I was working on a screen of kind of like the blank slate of when you get into, creating one of these bulk emails. And it's funny. I was just, just kind of riffing, just going on. And it's like, all of a sudden, like, I don't know, I have this like soft limit in my head. Like it should only be like 3 short paragraphs on this blank slate or whatever, very, very short. And it was like 4. And it was just like, I don't know. When I read it the first time, it was like, okay, this reads fine. But but there were 4 now, 4 of these like little short paragraphs. And it was like, I'm going to apply my 3-paragraph constraint here. And it's just like, when you start doing that, it's like, my God, so much of the stuff I can cut out. Like, I'm basically repeating myself here. I don't think I'm really adding any clarity, or like, no one needs to read it again. It just, yeah, it's funny how just focusing on words really like can improve the UI, and it's not obvious at first. You really do have to focus on it.
Yeah, and it's the cheapest change. It doesn't require more code. It doesn't require more design in many cases. Sometimes a little bit, tiny bit more design, but it's mostly words. It's communicating something, and it's the fastest, easiest, most powerful change in many ways, I think, that you can make to certain processes. And of course, in some cases, it doesn't work. But I think that's the first path to go down. Like, can we edit this? Can we rewrite this? Anyway, step one, I think, is that always. And it's usually kind of ends up being like the last, or you kind of ignore it. Like, oh, this doesn't work. We have to build something else. But oftentimes you don't have to.
Right.
Yeah, we've got like 5 minutes. I think I want to, I can show some stuff, but it's really 5 minutes. There's not a lot of time.
Skip it. I mean, bring it up Monday if you want.
All right. Maybe the whole show Monday.
Sure.
Will be dedicated to previewing Basecamp 3.
Cool.
On Monday. Yeah.
So we can talk about whatever else you want to. Something else, I kind of just even wanted to hear, you've sent a lot of email campaigns in your past from other tools, and you guys still do, you send out this newsletter. I mean, we don't have to talk about this now either, but I was also just kind of curious about your own use cases, like your own jobs that you have sending this stuff out. If you want to talk about it.
Yeah, for email specifically?
Yeah. I mean, is there anything you kind of run into that like you're not being served properly from another tool, or something that's on your mind that you wish was a little easier?
Yes.
While you're sending out an email campaign.
Totally tool. So I've had this idea for a long time. It's a very single purpose tool.
Okay.
Maybe it can be built in a high rise. I don't know. It's just called Talk to My Customers. That's the product name. It's very similar to like Know Your Company. But I want to go to a box on the screen, and if I type it in, whatever it is, and I hit send, it goes to all my customers. That's all I want to be able to do. I don't have to make a list of anybody. I don't want to have to segment. I just want to talk to my customers at large. And I feel like it's so ridiculous because you're like, well, it could just be an email app, but it's not, because you don't have all your customers in Gmail, perhaps, like in a group. I don't know, but I just want to I want to talk to my customers. That's what I want. So we have a monthly newsletter we send out, which is more of a sort of a broader thing. But I, as the company owner, want to just go, hey, I want to know how everyone's doing right now. What's going on? What's bugging you about? Like, it's so weird that I simply cannot ask my customers, really, like, anything bugging you today about Basecamp? Because we have so many, and they're in so many places, and we don't have a list of them all that's like so accessible in that way. I mean, we have them all, and we could blast, and we could export data. We could export their email addresses to a mailing list service and like import them there, and make a new group or a new whatever. I just want to always have a box open where I can just be like, hey, I've got a couple hours right now to dedicate to any questions anyone has about the product right now that they're unhappy with, things they love. Talk to me. Just talk to me. So I kind of want to be able to do that. It's almost like office hours for your customers, basically. And I don't know what that product really, like what the full scope of that is, but it's kind of, I imagine that a lot of people out there who run businesses and have, let's call it thousands and thousands of customers, it's surprisingly difficult to talk to them. Do you know what I'm saying?
A little bit. I mean, you're right that like the steps required to let people know something is going on there's a lot of them. And there's a lot of different channels, from email to in-app messaging.
Yeah, I don't want in-app messaging. Like I want widest common denominator, which to me is email.
Yeah.
Ben over at MailChimp said something which I thought was awesome. He said the E in email stands for employed. And his point is that if you're employed, you have an email address, which means email is the most reliable way to reach people with jobs, basically. And I think he's totally spot on about that. And so I just want to be able to send everyone an email, like all my customers an email right now. And I know I'd probably get swamped with replies, but I kind of want that. Like, I just want to be able to even do it. And like you can do it, but like just the steps involved, there's nothing that I've seen that's actually truly designed for that specific job, which I think is you could say it's like such a simple little thing, but I think it's such an important, big thing to be able to talk to your customers whenever you want.
Yeah.
In a way that doesn't require exporting, pulling data out of a database, and even like going through any other thing. I don't even want to format it. I don't want to format it. I just want, give me a text field and a send button. There's no to, there's no from. There probably is a subject, but that's it. Subject, body, send to everyone. That's all I want.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And some of the inspiration, there's similar inspiration already. I'm trying to bring some of that into High-Rise, which is like, you don't have to format a message. Like there is no picking templates. There's no design phase that you have to go through before you get this message out. At the moment, you can pick some stuff. At the moment, you could get a little deeper if you really wanted to. You can click the edit HTML button and then go nuts. But I agree, like there's too many steps, and I've tried to whittle it down. And that's interesting. There's some interesting stuff you just brought up that I think is going to influence some more of my thinking there. But you're right. No, I agree. There are too many steps. And I don't discount like you're saying, like this is a simple idea, but like I really am a huge champion of like, if you could even remove like 1 or 2 steps, even if there's simple things, like I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, maybe I've blogged about it before, about the OXO measuring cups.
Yes.
Those guys, like they had measuring cups our whole, like for like as long as mankind has existed.
Solved problem, right? But not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For as long as mankind's existed, we've had measuring cups. And yet here these guys come along and we're like, they realize like we spend a lot of time doing this step, like trying to look at like the level of water in this thing. And they just watch people do this. And it's like, we can get rid of that one step just by putting the measuring line, so you can look at the top of the cup. They did that. They sold millions and millions of these freaking measuring cups.
Yep. I know, it's wild. So anyway, there's the thing.
Yeah.
You asked me, and that's the thing. Like, it sounds so ridiculously simple, but
that's good to hear.
I have a feeling there's a lot of people out there nodding, like, oh my God, yeah. Why is it so hard just for me to talk to my customers? And it is, and it shouldn't be. So.
Yep. Cool, man.
We're out of time.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Everybody, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got an iTunes podcast now. Tell your friends.
I'm gonna do that recording now too. Cover video. I'll do it. I'll do it in a few minutes.
But yeah, everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for watching the show.
Later on, everyone.
See ya. See you on Monday.
Bye.